Hear now the scripture reading for this morning from the book of Ruth. Then she started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had consideration for his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to go back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you, in the house of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept out loud. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord has turned against me." Then they wept out loud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. Here ends the reading. Is that better? Yes. Good morning, church. Good morning. My name is Vinh Nguyen, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here this morning. I live in Northern California, and I came in last night, and I've never been to this part of Illinois before. I lived in Chicago for 3 years for seminary, and so I'm happy to be here this morning. I love this time of year, the season, the changes in the leaves, because where I live, we don't have winter, we don't have falls, nothing changed. It's all the same year round, sunny and sunny. That's all it is. But I am grateful to be here this morning. I want to say thank you to Pastor Summer for having me here to be with you in worship. I do want to say one thing. About 3 weeks ago, I caught pneumonia. And I've never had pneumonia before. I thought it would just be a cold where I would get over it in 2 or 3 days. But apparently, I still have a little bit of a cough. So I might cough a little bit throughout the sermon this morning, and I apologize for that. But I'm grateful to be here with you this morning. Will you please pray with me? Creator God, gather our spirits, center our hearts. May we see you in this space. May we reach towards your love and feel your presence. And may the words this morning inspire us and give us love for ourselves and for our communities. We ask this in your Son's name. Amen. My sisters, my brothers, the refugee crisis in the Middle East and the millions of Syrians who are trapped in this violent conflict has caught the world's attention. Today, there are more people displaced than ever before. The number is as high as it was during World War II. Almost half of the 60 million refugees are children under the age of 18. People are forced to flee their homes, walk for hundreds of miles on land to cross to a different country. And some put their children on boats to cross the dangerous sea to get to a place that is just safer, more secure than where they are coming from. We see images of waves of people in pain and hurting. A recent image of a refugee woman on TV still lingers with me. A pregnant woman crossing the border to try to get into Germany. You can tell that she is tired, holding on to her stomach. I'm guessing she's about 7 months old. Her feet tired, her body exhausted, waiting for the gate to open to get into Germany. Many are struggling to escape to survive, and these images leave us without words. These refugees have to run, escape the violence, the genocide, the wars that is taking place in their homeland. I don't want to be on this dangerous journey, crossing the ocean in so many different countries, one refugee said. I don't want to be a refugee, but staying in my own home country is more dangerous than the path that we have to endure ahead. And as this crisis continues in the Middle East, we see many nations arguing whether to help, to respond, to open their doors. We know that Europe alone cannot help the 6 million just in the Middle East, the Syrians. And we know that it requires the whole government of every country to respond to the situation. The global refugee crisis is not just in the Middle East and Europe that we've been seeing. It is global. It is happening everywhere. It is worldwide, 60 million of them. And our global community is calling on the church for help. No more than ever before, we find ourselves again at a crossroads struggling between how to accompany these vulnerable communities. For our faith, for us, as we gather here this morning as a faith community, deep down our soul echoes compassion and a desire to help. We turn to our faith, we turn to our church community in prayers, and we listen to God to guide us. The current global refugee crisis we face now is not new. In fact, the situation in Syria, in the Middle East, has been going on for at least 5 years. And now we are starting to pay attention to it. In the midst of so much global turmoil, we cannot leave our faith out of this conversation. In fact, we need our faith even more to help us to respond to the crisis. Our faith tradition that's been passed down to us by our ancestors, by our grandparents, our parents, the elders within our communities, taught us that deep down we worship a God who loves us, who is love, who is compassionate, and who is present always when there seems little hope. We see this throughout the Bible, throughout our ancestral faith journey, that God calls on God's people in time of need. In the book of Ruth that was read just now, we hear the story of a woman, Naomi, as she goes through her own personal crisis that affects not only her, but the people around her in the wider community. In the beginning, Naomi and her husband and their 2 young sons had to flee their home of Bethlehem because there was a famine in their home country. So they left everything behind and walked across dangerous territories for a long time. and moved to a new country of Moab, where there were no famines, and they lived as foreigners and made this new land their home. This story sounds familiar to us today, does it not? Of families fleeing because where they are living is not sustainable. The story of Naomi and her family fleeing their home is from 2,000 years ago. And here we are today, all over the news, all over social media. We see this story lived out again, but times 60 million people. The refugee crisis of today is not new. The crisis of people fleeing danger to find safety is something our ancestors experienced 2,000 years ago throughout our faith. Naomi's pain did not go away in the new land. Naomi's husband passed away, leaving her as a widow. Her two sons later married two local Moabite wives, Ruth and Oprah. But after 10 years of marriage, and with no children of their own, her two sons passed away, leaving Naomi without her two sons and her husband. So Naomi, Ruth, and Oprah are now bereft of breadwinners and protectors. Naomi is vulnerable and is unable to stay in Moab because she is now a widow in a foreign land. In biblical time, a woman without a husband or without a son is treated as property in society. You are a property to your husband or to your son. You are cast as an outsider, different. You do not belong with the community if you are alone. Naomi knows this, and she knows that she is unable to stay in Moab, and she has to flee her home again. This story from 2,000 years ago sounds so familiar to us today. Mothers and daughters fleeing dangers and violence just because of their gender. The decisions ahead for Naomi to stay in Moab or to leave, both decisions involve danger. So Naomi risks everything, and she decides to leave Moab. This is something she has already done multiple times with her husband and her two sons, and now she has to do it again, and she wants to do this alone. She thought this foreign land was going to be her home, but she has to leave it one more time. And when she was about to begin this dangerous journey back to Bethlehem, she asked Ruth and Oprah, her two daughters-in-law, to stay behind, to be with their people. This is their home. This is their community. But Ruth says no. Ruth turns to Naomi, knowing the danger that Naomi would face if she were to travel all by herself, that she might not survive alone. She tells Naomi, "Where you go, I will go with you." This is profound. Ruth will not abandon Naomi. Ruth chooses to go with her widow mother-in-law. Ruth chooses a life with Naomi, knowing that it is full of risk, of danger, of unknown possibilities, and that it could lead to her death. And this is not easy for Ruth. But in life, when one chooses to follow one's calling, when one chooses to follow one's faith, it is not always the easy path, and often it has potential risk and sacrifice. Faith requires sacrifice. Faith entails facing the unknown and taking on that unknown and to fully live into that. To follow Naomi means Ruth would live among people she does not know. She has never left Moab before. and for her to leave everything that she has always known and to follow Naomi. Where you go, I will go, she says. This is a powerful statement of love, of solidarity, of comfort in time of pain and darkness. Ruth is faithful and loyal to Naomi and will accompany Naomi until the very end. Ruth accompanying Naomi creates a covenant between the two of them. In her deepest and darkest moment, we see God is with Naomi. We see God who comforts Naomi in the presence of Ruth. We see God in Ruth offering healing to Naomi. Ruth's solidarity to Naomi is extraordinary, and it is how our God is to us in biblical time and in today's time. A God who is always accompanying God's people, a God who made a covenant of love, and a God who teaches us compassion. The millions of refugees today, they are our Naomis. They are our Ruth. More than half of them, more than half of the 60 million refugees are children and women. The God we worship is a compassionate and welcoming God and would not abandon Naomi. God would not cast Naomi out. God is with Naomi through Ruth, and comforts her. This is the God we worship and follow. We see that Naomi's vulnerability is also Ruth's vulnerability, and that they are intertwined. If Naomi is to survive, Ruth will survive. Their livelihood is interdependent of one another on this dangerous journey. They bond and become one. Their survival is at stake with one another. Their whole being is wrapped into one another. This concept is interesting because in my own heritage, in my Vietnamese upbringing, in my own tradition, rooted is the idea from the tradition of Confucianism that somehow have been imprinted in us for thousands of years. And that is a person's identity, his or her humanity is defined by his or her relationship with others. Each human person is constituted by communal relationships. You are a brother. You are a sister. You are a mother, a father, an aunt, an elder to somebody. Your identity is not shaped alone in isolation, but by relationship with others in the community that you gather, that you live with. I learned recently that this tradition that I have is not unique to the Vietnamese community only. That other communities share this as well. Theologian Roberto Gutierrez speaks of this for the U.S. Hispanic community, and he writes, for U.S. Hispanics, the entire cosmos, including the earth below and the heavens above, is intrinsically relational. The person is always intrinsically relational. My identity is given to me by my parents, by my relatives, my friends, and many other relationships and communities. There is no I without all these others, he writes. I am a particular, concrete, and unique embodiment of all those relationships. When someone encounters me, they encounter my people and my God. They encounter my pain, and I encounter their pain. Ruth's identity is tied to Naomi, and Naomi's vulnerability is also Ruth's vulnerability. Naomi's safe passage, Her salvation is also Ruth's salvation. Your people shall be my people, she says. You are my people. Our faith in God binds us to one another. Our sisters and brothers' salvation is also our salvation. We are interconnected. We are a people of God. Naomi's story of her fleeing in an era that we call the Middle East today resonates strongly with the current crisis of the 60 million refugees worldwide who are fleeing their homes, crossing dangerous territories to get to a place that is just more safe. A quote that I saw recently read, you have to understand that no one put their children in a boat unless the water is safer than land. This quote has been on my mind a lot lately, and it's also been a part of my daily prayer. And it has been sneaking into my thoughts every night when I bathe my 7-month-old son. Their journey is our journey, Ruth tells us. Their pain is our pain. These people are our people. Naomi's story shows us that there have always been refugees in our world, people who are forced from their home countries to flee, to find a new place. But there is something different about what's happening now. The United Nations says the world is experiencing a crisis more severe than anything it has seen. We are just beginning to wake up to what that means. And this global crisis will only continue to get worse. And for thousands of years, we, the church, we have been accompanying refugees. We have been showing our compassion to the world. We have been saving lives together. For thousands of years, this is the God that we worship and follow, a God who is love and compassionate, who taught us to love and be compassionate, a God who always accompanied God's people. The crisis surrounding the millions of refugees, we, my sisters and brothers, have been accompanying our global sisters and brothers. We have been reaching out and helping. We have been providing emergency aid as they cross the dangerous territories. We have been providing food, healthcare. We have been with them on their dangerous journeys. And we are a church, the Christian church, disciples of Christ, a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. And as a faith community, our church is there. And the global community is crying to the world. And we are responding. The world needs us. The world needs us to respond, and we are doing that. The world is yearning for healing. We are the church of compassion, of hope, of new life, and radical openness. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. The world is calling us to live this out. Where you go, I will go, our faith tells us. At our best, disciples, we welcome all to God's table for communion. And now, more so than ever before, as the world is calling us to help, we disciples, we are a movement of healing and wholeness. This is who we are as disciples. This is who we are as a community of faith, to accompany the people who need us in this world the way God taught us how to accompany people. And so may we go out into the world and be the church that the world needs us to be. And may we be the church that God is calling us to be. And may we commit and empower one another to welcome and to be in solidarity with the people like Ruth, who taught us, and to be in relationship, to be in struggle with them, and to offer hope. May we be the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. Amen.